Hi everybody, welcome back to Wanderlust. So this will be a special edition since I've been spending most of my time in Spain. This time I will be talking about my experience in Morocco. So a group of us from my study abroad group took a little weekend excursion to Morocco, and we had what can only be said as an adventure. Maybe a little bit of a misadventure, but it was definitely adventure somewhere in there. So I have a couple tips from you collected from our experience that if you're planning on traveling anywhere in Northern Africa, even Italy, or places in the Mediterranean, in the Middle East, that are safe, these tips can be used. So the first and the biggest tip that we learned is don't accept anything unless it's prepaid. That means tours, food. If there's not a price tag on it, then you're going to have to barter for it. So our experience, this was learned when a couple local boys pretty much scammed us into having to pay for a full-on tour. So we had, the first day we were there, we were planning on just looking around Tangier ourselves and exploring and, doing things like that. These local boys had offered to just show us around the Kasbah, which is a small area where we were staying. And we had thought that it was going to be just like a friendly tour. It ended up that they charged us 40 euros, or like $50 for the entire trip, or the entire day. And it was only 4 hours. And this was each of us. And we paid them because we didn't know, they knew where our Airbnb was, and we didn't know what these boys would do if we had just refused to pay them. So, and it was a tour. We did get to see a lot of stuff, but to us, we just pretty much got scammed out of $40 that we could have, or $50 that we could have spent on something else while just touring by ourselves. However, the next day when we went to Chefchaouen, the Blue City, we had a prepaid tour. And the tour guide was much more friendly. He didn't try to sell us anything. He didn't try to get us to buy things. He told us the good places to get things, and he also took us to a really good restaurant that was cheap. And so the two situations were completely different. So I highly recommend that you make sure that if you're going to do a tour, make sure it's prepaid. Do not rely on the locals. Their culture is around hustling and around getting money, especially out of tourists, and around ignorant people. So if you give in to that, they will take advantage of that. You have to be very forward, and you have to be very willing to say no. In America, even with salespeople coming to our door, we try to stay friendly to people trying to sell us stuff. Well, they will just take that as that they can push and push and push. So that is my first tip. My second tip is when you're bartering, plan out what you want to get, plan out how much you want to pay, and only bring that in your purse. So we bartered. We went to a rug place because Morocco is known for its rugs, and we also went to places for small souvenirs, and their system is purely based on bartering. So at the rug place, we all bartered prices down, but for us it was very uncomfortable and didn't feel very good after we had our purchases, because we felt that we didn't know what the real value of these things were. The last day, however, when all of us only had a certain amount of money left because we'd spent a lot, we literally we said this was our price. And for example, I got these small trinkets at this store, and I was like, this is all I have. I can't pay anymore. But he was so wanting to sell these to me that he just ended up selling them to me for way lower price. I basically talked down from $45 to $19. So, because that's all I had. But in Durham, it's a little different. So I highly recommend that technique when going bartering, bringing only as much as you're willing to pay for something and bartering it down to that. And being upfront, especially if you're uncomfortable with this system, like we were. My third tip is to buy food at the airport before you fly into Morocco, specifically Tangier. So even if that's just some chips or, a sandwich for that night, we had such a hard time finding food, like finding reliable, cheaper food and snacks. And because we had gotten scammed the first day and we didn't have that much money, we were literally living off of a small amount. Also, Tangier at night, we were living in the old town. Tangier at night can be dangerous, especially for women. And so at night, it's not necessarily safe for women to go out. And unless you're with a man. And that's really unfortunate, but that's the reality in Morocco. So you having that backup food in case of any situation is crucial. We didn't have that, and we ended up eating chips for dinner the first night we were there. Just Pringles chips, because the boys in the group went and got us some chips. So the next point, and this is specifically for Tangier and Chefchaouen, but I highly recommend that if you are from America or England or somewhere developed, stay in the new town of Tangier. We had an Airbnb, and we stayed in the old town. And while it was good to be in the culture, we were not in our element. And it's good to be uncomfortable, especially when traveling. It's good to feel out of your element, but it's not necessarily good to feel unsafe. And there were points in our experience that we felt unsafe. We had gotten followed by people. We had gotten, people coming up to the women and asking, like, basically how much, and things like that. And it was uncomfortable. We had somebody who tried to steal from us when we were at an ATM. So I highly recommend that you stay at a hotel in Tangier, and then go out during the days and explore and do risky things and things like that. But at night, it's a good idea to be living in areas that are a little bit safer, or to stay in places that are more tourist friendly, like Chefchaouen. And I'll put footage of Chefchaouen, but it was my favorite part of the entire trip. So Chefchaouen, it's called the Blue City. Everything in the city is painted blue. Well, not everything, but a lot of the buildings are just painted blue, apparently to ward away the bugs, because bugs don't like indigo, and the paint has indigo in it. But it's much more tourist friendly, much cleaner, and there's more places to eat, and it just feels fresher, at least to me. That brings me to my last point. It's important, and it was important for us to just embrace that we had no idea what we were doing. So it's hard for people when traveling to be out of their comfort zone. People like to be safe and people like to be comfortable. But when going to a developing country like Morocco, to keep your sanity, you have to understand that you are out of your element, that you don't know the culture, and that you don't know what's going on. And that's okay, as long as you stay aware, and as long as you stay in a group, and as long as you are having a good time. And that's the only advice I have for you. it was an experience. I don't know if I would go back to Tangier, probably to Chefchaouen, but it was an experience I've never had before, being in a country that was so different from my own. But I think it's important that anybody does that, whether it's, going to South America, in some places in South America, or, going to some places in Africa, realizing that people live differently than you and that you can be an outsider. So that when people come to your country and you see people struggling or people not understanding parts of their culture, you can you can have empathy for them. Sorry. And I feel like that is especially important in the climate, the political climate in America that we have now. So that's all I have for you today. I'm going to include another video that's a short montage of more footage from Morocco, but this is all I have for my tips. Keep following me. Follow me on social media. I have lots of pictures on Instagram and things like that to see pictures, and also I'll be giving tips on Spain and Portugal and eventually New Orleans as I venture on. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.